Without further ado, please welcome Ellen Lupton.
Good morning,
Hello, Ellen.
David. How are you?
Good morning. I know that it's early for you. What time is it your side of the world?
It is 6 a.m. on the East Coast of the USA.
Wow.
Yeah,
We
feels
apologize for that. So, for those of us, Ellen, who are getting to know you for the first time, could you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you spend your days doing?
Sure. I'm a graphic designer and writer and educator. So I spend my time looking at design, teaching design, thinking about it, publishing about it, doing talks and workshops. I kind of live inside graphic design and design more generally. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever tire of it? If you're so
When I get tired,
in
I go take a walk. I highly recommend it.
that resets things. And I know that when you come to From Business to Buttons, your talk will be about storytelling, but it's as
Yes.
applied to design. Could you clarify? Because it's not, storytelling for movies or novels. So what does it mean? What does it actually mean, storytelling through visual
Sure.
design?
So I got interested in storytelling maybe 7, 8 years ago when I took some graduate level classes in creative writing. And what I learned is that I'm not really a creative writer. I'm more of a technical writer, an expository writer. I have a lot of fun with that. But I loved learning about the structures and diagrams and patterns of narrative. And what struck me is how the insights of really high-level narrative thinking relate to design. So every story, for example, is a journey from A to B. And if we think about design and the many things that we create, whether it's a digital product, which has a lot of temporality to it, or whether it's a poster, we are designing a path for people. And that path might be highly structured and linear, or it might involve many different choices. But what we are creating as designers is the opportunity for people to follow that path. And that was really exciting to me. And I learned so many things in thinking about stories and narrative and action and setting and character and sensory detail that I was like, I must do a book that applies these principles to design.
So you're saying like looking at a poster or using an interactive digital product, there's this kind of sequence of steps similar to storytelling, but how do you vary the story? What other aspects could you mention one aspect of storytelling on this kind of sequence of things?
Sure. So we talk about journey maps, and a journey map can be very technical, right? It can be about onboarding and sort of solving basic mechanics of a product or an experience. But we also talk about emotional journeys and journeys having highs and lows. So product designers look for pain points of friction and try to make them go away, which is good. We should make pain go away for people. Storytelling actually embraces the idea of highs and lows. And there are times as designers where that's actually useful to us. So think about pitching a product or compelling people to sign up for your product, or explaining your solution to a design problem to a client, or trying to inspire new behaviors in people, socially beneficial behaviors. Here, we actually want to introduce conflict and highs and lows and get people curious about how a problem, right, something negative, something that concerns them, can be lifted up and enlightened through changing their behavior, embracing your solution, signing up for your product, reading the rest of a story if it's journalism, right? So we use intriguing headlines and intriguing imagery, right, to get people intrigued. And to make that interesting, you actually have to have highs and lows, right? You don't have a fever pitch of happiness at all times. You want to create curiosity and interest.
And would you design the lows? Because the diagram that you have behind you, I think it's familiar to a lot of people, like a customer journey map. And it's always a bit vague. And we're always working hard to remove everything below the waterline and push it up. But
exactly.
Are you saying that really we should retain the lows?
Well, it depends on what we're making. So, for example, in an exhibition design, the diagram I'm showing here is by Ben Jett, who's an exhibition designer who does historical exhibitions. And so when he's planning an exhibition, he finds that there are points of emotional intensity, and he wants to plan out where those points of intensity will occur and then create pauses so that you don't have every part of the experience at super drive. You also have places where people pause. And so if you think about the experience of a dinner, a meal in a restaurant, or waiting in line at a theme park, right? There are many experiences that designers are involved in that necessitate lows, right? Where you're waiting, where the thing hasn't happened yet, you're in a holding period. And so as designers, we can't always make all the lows go away, but we can account for them in the overall experience to create a positive experience overall. So the example of a theme park, waiting in a theme park can't be eliminated, but designers have found many different ways to make the wait part of the experience and less of a point for visitors.
Well, sometimes the theme parks is an interesting example. Sometimes the wait is you're building the anticipation. I think is it Paramount? I can't remember who has a theme park in Los Angeles, where there's a movie called, or a show called The Walking Dead. It's all about the apocalypse and zombies. And the queue goes through like a broken hospital with blinking lights and ominous noises. I found it much, much better than the actual ride itself. The anticipation and the slow burn.
And it's much longer.
And
right?
Yeah, that's true.
So if you think about the time that people spend on certain activities, like going to the doctor, in my country at any rate, you spend a lot more time waiting to see the doctor than you actually spend in active consultation. And so healthcare designers are looking at how to make that waiting period informative, comforting. A major point of anxiety for people in healthcare situations is simply not knowing how long they're going to wait. And when people know how long the wait is, their anxiety decreases, even if the length hasn't changed. And we see this in theme parks where they have tickers that will tell you exactly how long the wait is. And then that anxiety lifts. And so those principles can be applied to so many things in life.
It occurs to me, I just want to mention, when you talk about that little ticker or the clock and that tells you how long the line's going to take, what they usually do is they give a longer time than what it will be. It's a longer estimate so that you are positively surprised. It's like, oh, it was shorter than we thought. whilst actually you spent half an hour standing in line for a ride that's 5 minutes. It's pretty clever. Could you give an example? I can understand how storytelling would relate to a sequence of interactions, like walking around that exhibit or clicking through a digital interface. But how would it apply to a poster, like a movie poster?
Okay, so when we look at something, a painting, say, our eyes are moving across the surface. So imagine reading a piece of text. You don't read the entire text all at once, even though it's a still visual field on a page. Your eye is moving, and that's how we read. And actually, that's how we read paintings and illustrations as well. And so artists know how to attract the eye at the most important points. Like, we are hardwired to look at faces. So faces, grab your eye, and other things go to the background. A movie poster has imagery. It also has text, right? It has the name of the movie, the stars. It has text that you're not supposed to read, right? The small print that's in a special font that's extremely narrow, that is really there for legal purposes, but contributes to the texture of the thing and our association with the thing. And so a movie poster, we are not seeing it all at once. Our eye is moving around and putting it together. So there's this idea of the journey and the path is really fundamental to how we look at any kind of visual communication. And then, of course, your choice of imagery, it could just be, Tom Cruise's face, or it could be Tom Cruise doing something, right? And that's, that becomes a story when we have some indication of action. How do you show action? Well, costume, setting, pose, lighting, all of these things make it not just a headshot of a famous actor, but it begins to tell a story about something that's taking place.
And as soon as you have a picture of Tom Cruise, it's action, and he's going to be running like this.
But we bring our memory to it. Yes, definitely.
What is something, so you took this course and you saw the parallel between storytelling and different kinds of design. What is something that you kind of thought about recently or learned recently about storytelling applied to design? You had a new...
Sure. One of the things that really surprised me when I studied creative writing is one day our professor told us to write a description. And writers love describing things to excess. Creative writers. So we had to write a description of something related to the stories that we were all working on. He said it had to be full of sensory detail. So we're all sitting there writing about the quality of light and the what color hair the character has, and really pumping up the visual impact of our descriptions. And then the teacher steps back and he says, no. When I say sensory detail, I mean not visual. How does the scene smell? How does it sound? What is the temperature and the humidity in the room? And this just blew me away. It was like a light bulb coming on, but more of an olfactory bulb coming on. That there's this whole other realm of experience that we convey through language, right? Because narrative writing is really just words. It's the most simple interface we have. It's just words. But it opens up to people this experience that's actually much more physical when it's done well. And so that got me into thinking about sensory experience in design and how design is, we so emphasize the visual, and especially in the world of Instagram and, you know, rendered products and fly-throughs, that we can go see some architecture and never actually have been there. You know, we have such a visual simulation of design today. But if you think about like the chair that you're sitting on, your relationship to it is not visual at this moment. You're not looking at it, but you're experiencing it, and it's affecting your health, your comfort, your mobility, if the chair moves or doesn't move. And so that physicality of design is just so important to our experience, and yet is kind of underplayed in how we think about it. So that's a really cool area that really opened up my eyes about design.
I think that's something that all of us on this call can start thinking about. We are primarily creating things that are visual. So you mentioned this creative writing class, and you said that you're more of an expository writer because you write a lot of books about graphic design. Has your writing changed as a result of studying narrative?
Oh, definitely. You know, the key to narrative is that a story is action. And Aristotle, back, you know, 2,000 years ago, defined a story as an action with magnitude, a complete action with a certain magnitude. And what he meant by that is that in a story, we need the action to feel complete, right? It has to have a beginning, middle, and end, an arc. And that means the action is whole. So think about clicking a button in an interface, right? If there's no feedback, people feel that the action is incomplete, right? So we know this as designers. People need that feeling that they did it. And by magnitude, it has to matter, right? The chicken can't just cross the road. They have to have a purpose, right? She's tracking down her ex-husband for alimony, and there's a truck coming her way, right? If you just cross the street, that's not interesting, right? So the story has to have some magnitude to it. And that's the key to storytelling. That's it. You know, Aristotle knew it 2,000 years ago. It's still true today. The complete action, and it has to matter. And so when we look at design, you know, or you asked me about writing, right? So writing can often be very passive. It just describes things as they are, not things happening. Many writers focus on theory and ideas when what people really want is examples. They want examples because they want to see it. They want to have a cognitive recognition of how whatever the theory is actually works in the world. And so when you bring that storytelling mentality into your writing or public speaking or anything else, you front load examples, things happening, the impact of a theory on the world, and not just the idea, the abstract idea. Abstract ideas are not stories. They sit there.
I'm thinking, have you read Stephen King's little book on writing?
Absolutely, I have.
Yeah. And it's
a wonderful book. It takes
book.
About 20 minutes to read.
Yeah, I think it took me 23 minutes though. But there's a thing in there where he goes, instead of writing a description, let's say that I want to evoke rain. He says, I don't want to write, you know, all the details of the rain and how it hits various surfaces and runs down sides of things. He wants to say something that evokes a picture in the mind of the reader. So he's kind of looking at the reader as a black box that you prod, so things happen inside. I don't know why, I just want to bring that up. I think that's brilliant. insight.
It's fantastic. One of his comments was that the goal of writing is to put what's in your head inside the reader's head. And to me, that is so liberating, because as writers, we spend a lot of time like looking for the right words, and being educated people, we're trained to make everything sound smart. It's very hard to shake off that training. But what Stephen King says is, you don't worry about that. It's exactly what you just explained. You're trying to just get the information into somebody's head. And you do that through simple means, not through trying to sound smart.
Yeah. I can't quite draw the parallel, but I'm sure there's a lesson here about design, about visual design, about interactive design, not trying to be too smart, but kind of pushing people in the right direction and evoking things. Being less
it relates to creating design that's obvious, right? Design that communicates as clearly as possible to people, so that the design part kind of goes away, and the action and the experience that you're allowing users to take charge of comes forward.
A few days before you come to From Business to Buttons, I know that you're also giving a workshop on typography. So my first question is, why should we care about typography? How many fonts do I really need?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. So typography is my true obsession. And as a writer, being able to directly manipulate typography and page layout is, it's the reason I've written 30 books, is because I designed them myself. And it is just so empowering. And one of the things about typography is, there's a lot of fonts out there. Way too many fonts, but that's font diversity. It's a good thing. More fonts every day. Really becoming adept with using typography, you don't need that many fonts. Typography is really about hierarchy and layout and getting a feeling for line lengths and line spacing, and how different fonts work together, how you can create a palette of difference that, again, helps people do what they want to do, read what they want to read, find the information that they're looking for. And that's really how typography becomes such a great tool for all of us to use to communicate. You don't really need all the fonts.
So how many do we need? Fonts are, okay, so if we come to your workshop, what will we be able to do afterwards?
Well, I have a really great model for working with typography, and I call it the ice cream theory of typography. And so if you think about an ice cream sundae, it has a vessel, often a very pretty dish or bowl or, tall fluted thing. And then it has a bunch of ice cream in it. And nobody wants to eat 3 scoops of vanilla ice cream. So it has sauce, and the sauce is rich and exciting and intense. And that's your headline, right? So your headline breaks up all that plain garamond into it adds flavor and intensity. And then there's an element that many designers forget, especially people new to typography. And this is really a crucial part of an ice cream sundae. This is the crunchy bits. So crushed peanuts or toasted coconut. These elements add texture and sparkle and crunch to your ice cream sundae. And in typography, these are the little details, the small caps the footnotes, the sidebars. Often they're at the edge, right? They're coming in. It's like how you style, let's say, a price or an address differently from some other part of text. And that creates this level of texture. And so I love doing typography workshops. My workshops are very hands-on. We're actually doing type together. So you want to, bring your InDesign or your Illustrator, whatever you like. We'll actually build some typography together, and we'll look at how to create a typographic system, really, that has all the elements: vessel, ice cream, sauce, and crunchy bits. And when you put all those elements together, you have something that feels complete. And it's right back to Aristotle, right? If something is missing, it doesn't feel complete. And I think if you come to my workshop, you'll really be able to up your game on that and create some typography that feels more satisfying. And so a little bit of, think about like a card and an interface. That card has the ingredients of a bigger typographic world. And so if you start with something kind of small, a picture, a headline, a caption, a couple of details, later you can build that out into a bigger project. I do that with my graduate students, where we style some really simple things and then like make a whole website based on it. We won't get that far in a workshop, but we'll get the basics there. Yeah.
You were kind enough to send me a PDF of your book, Thinking with Type, which is a beautiful book. And one thing that I really enjoy, I haven't read the whole thing yet, but one thing I really enjoyed, no one will, is that you do cover a lot of writing systems from other cultures. So there is kanji and Arabic writing and Thai fonts in there. And I'm curious, well, two things really. Can you understand those writing, the typography of those writing systems without understanding those writing systems? And or what did you learn from spending some time with these other writing systems?
Yeah, well, it was really fascinating. So my book is the third edition of a book that was first published 20 years ago. And, in that period, I've become, more aware of the importance of not being so Eurocentric and recognizing the diversity of typographic expression and how much typography today is multilingual. Many websites have to be localized, for different writing systems around the world. So that this becomes part of our professional practice, but it's also about being cognizant and grateful for typographic diversity. So I worked with experts in different writing systems, typographic experts, to create these, short introductions to just a few of the world's writing systems. And what's so fascinating is that you learn that the assumptions that people native to the Latin alphabet make about what typography is, they just don't hold in other writing systems. So for example, we have upper and lower case. Very few other writing systems have any distinction between upper and lower case. And it's sort of a patriarchal thing baked in to Latin typography. I went to Rome a couple weeks ago and, visited the Trajan column, which is the origin of the capital letters in Latin-based typographic tradition. And it was so interesting because this Trajan column is this, 50-foot tall, cylindrical, soaring monument about conquering another country. It's a monument to a war. And at the base are the origins of capital letters. And so you start to just see like some of the principles that we take for granted in, quote, Western typography are really, connected to systems of power and domination. And they don't, those things aren't necessarily in every writing system. Spaces between words, that's something that we really rely on in Latin typography. And yet not all writing systems have that, including not all alphabets. So we assume that
we didn't have it.
Not in the beginning, right? So the Greeks
in the beginning
for a while didn't do that. And then they added it. And it's very, I wouldn't want to give it up. But not all writing systems have that. And so it's just really, you learn about yourself from learning about others. And more importantly, you learn about others. So my book takes a little broader view there, which I think is very valuable, and especially because the book is a textbook. It's used to introduce typography to new designers. And it's very important what you show people at the beginning of their experience shapes how they understand their field. Imagine an art history class that you or I might have taken in college. It was all Western art. And so I came to understand that that's the story of art. And once you start interrupting that, you give people a different worldview.
That's lovely. And I think those examples in the book made me very curious to learn at least one more writing system. But okay, this is going to be an unpopular question with some of our audience. I find that, and apologies to my friends, I find that some visual designers aren't always able to talk about visual design in a way, they talk about it, but it often sounds really vague, and it's very hard for non-visual designers to get much out of it, including clients. So how can we talk about visual design in a way that's more, I'll give you a comparison. User experience designers often relate their work to use cases, user needs, business models. How can visual designers ground their work in a way that's more understandable to non-visual designers? It's a big question and full of assumption.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
Sure. So it's really, we need to tell better stories about what we do and why it matters. So, one thing that we do as visual designers is create a world for people. If you think about the hero's journey, which is another beautiful narrative structure, where the hero is brought to a special world, right? She leaves the ordinary of Kansas and is plunged into a magical place and crosses the threshold into a place that is different. And as visual designers, we are creating that portal into the special place. And then we create the place, right? So if you think about a website or a product or a book or a magazine or a theme park or a restaurant, right? Everything has been designed to create this coherent other world. And without that, you're just at Walmart. You probably don't have Walmart. You're so lucky.
We know it.
Right. That's a place that's not designed. Whereas, a place like IKEA, when you walk into IKEA, everything is designed from the route that you take through the store, your yellow brick road, to every bit of signage, graphics, language. there's so much visual design there. If you erased the visual design from IKEA, you would really lose the brand story, right? If you only had the products and you didn't have the visual narrative that is carrying you through. I think one way to demonstrate the power of visual design to clients is to show them what something looks like without it. You know, so unstyled text, a Word document, a paper box with just nothing on it. The power of transformation, you know.
I think that's that's great advice, showing the unstyled and the styled. That drives the point home. But what about, visual design is about making choices. So a common conversation would be, why this rather than this? So how can visual designers better argue for the design choices they've made?
Well, sorry. Talking about the reasons for your choices. And if you don't have any reasons, then maybe the choices you're making aren't so great, So, like with typefaces, for example, explaining why the typeface you've chosen for a brand identity is valid. You're helping to educate your client or your teammates about the medium that you're working in. The same way that a UX designer is educating her teammates about user research and, the ethnography or all the kinds of expertise that, are important and that other people aren't going to get. Like, why is that so important? So we have to do a really good job of educating everybody. And that's been my passion. That's why I write books and do talks and everything, because I'm so convinced that better design makes better experiences for people. Think about how many times you go into a shop and are attracted to something because of the label. We all do it. And I don't hate myself for that, because I want beautiful things. And the label speaks to me about the values of the product and what I'm going to get out of it.
No,
and
I don't think
it's the cheapest thing, right?
Right.
Putting better
no, I don't
typography
think it's convinced
on
anyone.
Things. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. On this call, I think I was more interested in how to ground your design and how to argue for it. But I think you gave a nice answer, which is basically you have to show people various alternatives and explain what they do and how they work. I think, and again, maybe fewer words.
Them.
Exactly.
Yeah. One thing, if you're doing a pitch and you have 3 ideas, give each of the ideas a name. One is like the wilderness,
right?
And one is downtown, and one is Mars, and then it helps people to understand that, oh, these are 3 different worlds, and they each bring with them 3 different sets of values and experiential promises.
Yeah.
We have to educate people.
In, again, making a comparison with user experience design, not that these things are separate because they go into each other, but we do a lot of testing to see whether things work. In a sense, can people figure this out? It's usually the question that we pose. Do you ever do is there ever any testing of visual design? Is it ever subjected to its intended users?
I'm certainly not involved in that. Sure there is. There's A/B testing, there's focus groups. There's, in healthcare design, there's evidence-based design, which is very rigorous testing. So sure. I just hope people don't get too stuck on testing, because think about like Apple products. Like if someone had asked you in 2007, would you like a phone that doesn't have a keyboard with physical buttons? Remember those? Would you like one? You would have gone like, no, how will I ever use it? Right.
And in fact,
so like the testing might have killed a product like that.
Yeah. I was working at Sony Ericsson when the iPhone came out, and there were people at Sony Ericsson and Ericsson who went, nah, this is never going to fly. What a stupid idea. They are now eating their hats. I have a topical question for you, which is, it's kind of an obvious question, but I am very, very interested in your thoughts on this. What is your feeling about kind of AI assisted design tools, or even, we're seeing so much of it happening right now. How would you bring that into your design education?
Well, it's very scary, I have to say, because, we're already in a situation where students are looking at so much graphic design every day on Instagram, and it's challenging in that context to come up with your own ideas. Now we have AI that it's really shocking what it can do. It's really it's a scary kind of turning point for the design field, and I think especially for the illustration field, because someone still has to decide what the picture is going to be. Is it a kitty in a spacesuit, or is it a melting ice cream cone on the Empire State Building? But then the AI can just make it and make you 20 of them, so you can pick which one you like the best. So that's very disturbing. And writing, the same thing with the Chat GPT. The quality of the writing is very high, especially for expository writing, which is what I do. So it's alarming for sure.
Yeah.
And
what are you thinking? I mean, you do a lot of teaching. So what are you doing now? Are you kind of waiting to see where
we're
this
telling
goes,
students, we're telling them they can't use those tools to generate work that they are calling their own. So some of our students are very interested in AI and doing creative things with it, like typographic things that are very interesting. But at this point, we are worried that students might just bring in an AI generated project and present it as their own work. And currently that is not acceptable. But I think educators from kindergarten to graduate school are going to have to grapple with these tools kind of replacing learning, which is very disturbing.
Or maybe they won't actually replace, but they will change the role of graphic designers. I don't think it's going to be a while.
I'm not just talking about graphic design, I'm talking about everything.
Everything, yeah. It seems to me that you should probably allow, some tasks should be done without the tools in order to grasp. I mean, maybe like handwriting a font to understand what a font is, but it'd be strange not to allow people to also work with the tools. It's going to be part of their reality.
Yeah, we're going to have to find out ways to do that are ethical and educational and aren't, scraping other people's ideas in an illegal way. The legal things are still being worked out.
Right.
In US copyright law, right now you can't copyright an AI image because its authorship is so obscure and so dispersed. And then there are challenges around whether it's violating copyright. So there's like on two edges of dispute. It's very challenging. And, and with writing, we used to be able to check for plagiarism, which is pretty easy. There's websites that do it, and it just you put in a sentence that seems too well written for the student, and you can find it instantly. But with AI, you won't be able to do that because the sentences are original, sort of.
I'm sure, I mean, if I was a student, I would get an AI that would write slightly, poorly with a few spelling mistakes, just to make it even more convincing.
Well, that's a good experiment to try.
Yeah. So apart from the horrors of AI, what else, what are you thinking about right now? What's preoccupying your time?
Well, I'm thinking a lot about type because I'm finishing this 3rd edition of my book. So that is endlessly fascinating. Variable type and optical sizes and global typography. I can't get enough, and I do love fonts. So I'm really enjoying that. And it's the holidays are here, and I love cooking and being warm and hanging out with my family. So it's a nice time of year.
Great. What would you, which one of your books, someone who hasn't read your books and want to get into typography, what would you recommend they start with? The newest?
Well, the new book is coming out in 2024, so you'll have to wait. But the 2nd edition is excellent too, but it's 10 years old now. And there's many other great books about typography. I just read a really nice one by Sophie Baer, which is like a very compact little book that just it gives all the kind of insights of learning typography in a really short, crisp, understandable way, almost like an AI wrote it.
And who knows?
She's wonderful. She's an incredible typography researcher and educator, and she has this really cute little book that I think.
Do you remember the title
valuable.
of it?
I think I just put it back on my shelf. I think it's called Typography Tips, but I'm going to put her name in the chat.
Oh, yes, that'd be lovely.
I can.
Anything else that you're reading right now that you would like to recommend?
Well, the French writer Annie Ernaux just received the Nobel Prize for Literature. And so I've been reading her writing, which is crystal clear. I just love clarity in writing. And she aspires in her work to simply convey the truth. And it's unembellished. And it's stunning. So I highly recommend the work of Annie Ernaux. And it's of the moment, to celebrate this great woman writer.
Any particular novel by her?
The one I just read is called A Woman's Life. And it's about her mother. It's really a memoir. And it's very quiet and kind of devastating and short. I like short books, so I read it
short
in
is
an
good.
hour or two. Yeah,
especially for gifts. I think it's it's a moral imperative to only give people short books.
Short books like Stephen King's book.
Yeah, look on what was it called? On writing, definitely
on
worth
writing,
it.
Yeah.
We are nearing the end of our chat. Is there something I really should have asked you, or something that you would expect me to ask?
I can't think of anything else. I feel like we've covered so many interesting topics, and I love hearing your perspective on all of it. It's been a lot of fun.
And I can only say the books that you've made, they are incredibly beautiful. And I was wondering if it was you who did all the typography, but they are a delight. So I recommend people checking those out. I think there is one question in the chat, or maybe two questions. Let's just check out. Okay, so you posted the title. Excellent.
Yeah.
Jenny asks, she likes the ice cream theory as a metaphor, and she can understand what the crunchy bits are.
Yeah.
She wondered what would be some examples of vessels.
Oh, well, the vessel,
metaphor.
yes, absolutely. Well, the vessel would be like your grid, right? The underlying structure, that the format, the shape, margins, whether or not you have a texture or color in the background. Yeah, so the vessel is very important. And for chefs creating ice cream sundaes, often it begins with the vessel. Right, they find some beautiful piece of glassware, and that becomes the starting point for the dessert. And so for designers, it's really the framework, right? Good question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Ellen. It was a joy to talk to you.
I loved it.
I'm glad. And I look forward to meeting you at From Business to Buttons in May the 12th. I'm going to share a little slide with everyone. This is the point where I remind everyone that, ticket prices go up. Hang on, what's going on? This is the slide. Yes. Ticket prices are going up on Christmas Eve because we are evil. So make sure to buy a ticket in good time. And we will also continue this series of interviews with our fabulous speakers, and I'm hoping to do that next year. So all the best to you, Ellen, and to everyone on this call, and wishing you a great holiday in whichever form that takes for you, and see you soon, and enjoy the rest of this week as well. Thank you, Ellen, so much.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.